Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cardistry Talk. This is episode 68, the first attempt at a live episode. So we'll see how this goes. If there's any audio issues, hit me up in the chat, and we'll try to get anything resolved. But I think we have a decent setup here. Today, we have Napalm Slurpee, a.k.a. RedactedUSA, a.k.a. Cam, and I'm super happy to have him here today. So would you be willing to kind of introduce yourself and kind of who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So as you said, I'm Napalm Slurpee on Instagram. I'm a cardist. I've been doing cardistry for, I'd say, a solid. Oh, and there's my girlfriend's rabbit too. He's been running around in the background. Been doing cardistry for I'm not sure how long I've been doing it for, but I've been doing magic since I was 5, and I've been doing cardistry since I was about on and off since I was about maybe 12 or 13. I just recently started creating moves, and I designed my own deck, and I've been getting more involved with the cardistry, but I'm still relatively new to the whole community as a whole. And yeah, I started my own brand, RedactedUSA, just released my first deck recently, and I've sort of just been learning, meeting new people, learning stuff. It's been a good time.
Mm-hmm. It's been really cool to see you in the community, and like I've seen you in person now pretty recently, which was pretty cool. And then the gun reveal, which we'll get to later, probably.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite things I've seen in a while, honestly.
Oh, I'm glad.
We do have one question from the chat, real quick. We have
for sure.
Cardistry Tyler here. He said, "What is the question? What is the deck that is closest to you right now?"
That happens to be MK Ultra playing cards, my own deck of cards. Obviously, I'm going to be using them. And we can talk about that later.
Yeah,
but Tyler already knows a lot about those.
Tyler is very, very active. I have this Wisteria deck from Pound Playing Cards. I just got these sent to me recently. So I don't have a Make Ultras yet. So
the Make Ultras, right?
I can't flex them for you here, but in the future, maybe.
For sure.
One of the questions that I had was just, I know you said you've been in Magic and cardistry for a while, but how did you kind of get into Magic or cardistry? Like, what was your origin? Did you see anything that really like inspired you or made you want to get into it?
Yeah, well, I suppose I started Magic when I was 5 because my aunt gifted me a Magic set for my 5th birthday, and I instantly fell in love with Magic then and there. But of course, that was all just those little props and the ball and vase and cups and balls and whatnot. And I started getting to card magic when I was probably about 8 or 9. And then card magic became my go-to. I'd carry a deck of cards around with me everywhere I went. And at some point, when I felt comfortable, I learned the Charlier cut. I learned one-handed shuffle. But I learned those entirely as extensions of magic and how I can add flourishes to my tricks. And it wasn't until about 2016, 2017, when I began pursuing cardistry and extreme card manipulation as its own thing, separate from magic. So I would do things that a magician should never do, arm spreads and crazy flips and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really grew to love it because it amazed people in a different way than magic does, and it entertains them in a whole nother way. And I really got a lot of enjoyment from that. And then sort of, I went all in on cardistry when I went to college, and I spent a lot of time in my, dorm room between classes. I had a lot of free time when I wasn't, at least, later on in college when I wasn't studying, and cardistry sort of became pretty important to me then.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of cardists started because they just had a lot of free time at one point. Like for me, my senior year of high school, I'm like, man, I'm doing nothing right now.
Yeah.
I should do something with this time.
Yeah.
We have another question in the chat from Stu, Batman Stu, and he says, "What do you think it's better reactions, cardistry or magic?"
Better reactions? I would say magic is better reactions. People will like go crazy and they'll go, "Oh, wow," when it comes to magic. But with cardistry, people are more just like mesmerized. They're like, "Whoa, that's really cool." They seem more invested in cardistry, whereas they seem more amazed by magic. I don't know if it makes any sense at all, but I suppose I like Cardistry because I'm not trying to fool anyone. There's a lot less stress. If I drop a card, it's not a big deal. Whereas if in Magic, if you flash or something, you can ruin the whole trick, you know?
Mm-hmm. And then my next question for you is one that I always ask on the show.
For sure.
And it's just what started the show is just kind of what is your creative process? I know you said on the Paperless podcast, this was something you've thought a lot about. So for you, how do you get into that creative process and making moves and making a deck? And does it differ between those two?
Oh, well, yeah, I would say definitely they're two completely different mediums. For when I make a move, for me, I only just recently started making moves about a year or two ago. So I'm still very new to it. But when I first started making moves, I had no direction to where I was going because I saw everyone had their own styles and different kinds of moves, packet cuts, aerials, fans, spreads, whatever. And I didn't know where to go from there. And eventually I realized I like packet cuts, and I sort of learned from other creators that I really like flowy moves that don't have a lot of dead packets. That's just my own personal liking. So I decided to restrict myself to having very few dead packets in my moves. And that's just something I put on myself to help me create and push forward, because when you're creating moves, at least for me, I often get stuck doing the same things over and over and over. So by limiting what I can do, I feel that helps me break through that sort of freeze I have when creating. I also realized that I really like moves with weird grips.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I make a move, I try to throw in at least one grip that I've never felt before, something that feels weird to my hand, something that feels foreign. Some people do the exact opposite. We talked with Sid Faze, and he says, do whatever comes naturally to you, whatever feels right. I sort of took the opposite approach. I do whatever feels unnatural, something that feels wrong and weird to you, because then you can find weird grips and motions and displays that maybe no one's found before. It's different for everyone, but that just happens to be my creative process. Another thing is I like to create things that don't resemble something that anyone has done before, something that fits my own personality, what I like to see. I like nature a lot. I like, going outdoors and hikes. So I was first inspired. I want to create a move that looks like a flower blooming. So a lot of my moves have some sort of cool 4-packet display that opens, and that's me trying to get sort of that natural, organic sort of movement that can be found in nature. Do I do a great job at it? Doesn't matter. That's just sort of how I get to where I go, as well as just weird stuff that no one's seen. Like my gun production move that you mentioned, I had this 2-packet cut that people really liked that I used for the Lotus in Hand singles. Stuff like that. That's how design moves. It's different for everyone, but that's just my process. And of course, as I continue making moves, that will change, but that's where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
For designing decks, I like to put my own personality into them. I like shit posting and putting memes and jokes in there because that's kind of my own personality. So my ad cards are unserious. Some of them are serious, some of them are unserious, at least in MK Ultra. And I try to do things that I would use. I only make decks that I myself would use regularly. I'm not going to create a deck that I would hate to use. It doesn't make much sense to me. So I try to make things that have my own personality, my own soul in them, and that I feel comfortable using frequently.
Mm-hmm. So just a quick shout out. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat now. Just want to shout out Cardistry Experience. Great to see you guys. And then Pablo Frey also hopping in. He said shirtless cam, so I don't think we can. I don't want to get demonetized that quickly.
Right.
Our first ever live interview.
That sounds like Pablo. Right.
But great to see you guys. Thanks for showing up. So thank you for talking about your creative process. And then I know you described a little bit of your creative process for making the playing cards. What has your experience been with RedactedUSA and kind of creating a deck after the cardistry market's kind of slowed down a little bit, it feels like?
For sure. Yeah, it's apparent to everyone that market's slow. Fontaine hasn't produced decks in months. Now anyone is releasing, so they're sort of drip releasing. They're not releasing as quickly as they used to. Some brands have straight up stopped releasing decks. Cardistry Touch doesn't even exist anymore. And I'm not doing it as a business standpoint. So I'm doing it just for my own enjoyment and for my own fun. And what I really like doing is just getting myself out there and having fun with people. So I did a lot of it for, well, I've really gotten into website designs. Of course, I want to make my own website. So all of RedactedUSA is hand coded by me. I had a lot of enjoyment doing that. But the most fun I've had is with the giveaway that we did. I didn't do a normal giveaway. I wanted to put some fun game in there. So I really enjoy game theory. So I don't know. Do I have time to explain the giveaway?
I just go for it. Yeah.
Cool. So I did a giveaway maybe about a month ago where I put 144 decks up to win as a prize. Most brands do 6 decks a brick, usually not more than a brick. But I put 144 decks, a gross out there. But there's a twist, right? You would enter in as usual, you share it to your story or whatever to generate more, interaction, engagement with a post.
Mm-hmm.
And then, however, there's a twist to this one. So you could play the game normally and get 1 entry, and then you could win the whole thing from a luck of a draw. Or you could put a twist on it where you could get 5 entries. However, you would be removing 5% of the 144 decks for everyone to win. And that's exponential. So every time someone takes away 5%, it removes for everyone, and it gets fewer and fewer decks as the time goes on. Explain that kind of poorly. But something about giving people the choice whether they want to play fair or skew it in their favor and win was a lot of fun for me. It adds an extra layer to your typical giveaway that often isn't there. Most of the time you see a post, you drop a comment with 3 friends and you move on. And then a week later, maybe you win, maybe you didn't. But this one engages people more. It gets people thinking about what other people are doing. It's a bit more interactive, and I really enjoy that. And I gotta say, the most fun, most enjoyable thing for me is seeing other people using the deck, other people liking it, hearing what they have to say about it. I've gotten a lot of kind words, some from Pablo and Tyler, who are here now. And I love it when I can create something that people enjoy, people like, and seeing them using it in videos, having an uncut sheet on their wall. It's been just a really fun time.
Mm-hmm. I know too that I've been guilty of just the generic kind of giveaway, three
Me too, yeah.
3 friends. I think everybody has,
because
it's just the easy way, especially early on. But what you did was really cool. Cardistry Experience asked, did you expect the game / giveaway to end the way it did? Did you expect more people to kind of skew the system? What was your original thoughts going in, and then how do you think it actually happened?
That's a great question. I did not expect it to get that popular, and I expected that I would give away anywhere from 2 to 3 bricks. I had that mentally prepared from the beginning. The initial giveaway was actually only going to be a half gross, but I said, why not go all the way? Why not do a full gross? And I expected I'd be giving away a whole bunch of decks, but that's not a big deal for me. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for fun and enjoyment. But a lot more people pushed the button than expected. And at the end there, I was kind of white knuckling in the steering wheel. I was kind of hoping that we'd slow down and fewer people would push. But towards the end, I think people had figured out that a lot of people are going to push the button. So it'd be in the player's benefit to continue to push the button. So at the end there, we got a really strong push. The decks kept decreasing, and I saw that number go down and down. I got worried for a second, but I think it ended up on a pretty solid number where everyone was happy. And to make up for the less than a brick, I was hoping I'd get at least a brick, but the end result ended up being, I think, 8.47 decks or something like that. So or is it 8.57? Doesn't matter. About a half a deck, 8.5 decks. So to make up for that winning, I decided that I would chop a deck in half, and I would custom hand make the box and reseal it as an additional sort of prize to your standard deck, and people seem to enjoy that as well. So I think in the end, it actually exceeded my expectations. It's a lot more enjoyable. It got a lot more, got a lot of people talking about it. Someone made a meme about the giveaway, which I found hilarious. And yeah, it was just a great experience.
Yeah, I did really enjoy you cutting the deck in half. I thought that was pretty funny. And I think that just goes to show, like you've been saying already, is that like you're kind of in it for the enjoyment and the fun of it right now.
Sure.
Tyler asked, what was your thoughts on the process of designing the tuck case for the Mick Ultra deck? And yeah, that's basically the question.
Yes, my process for designing the box for MK Ultra, which is here, I had a lot of iterations of it, and this is what I settled on. And it's settled. I think I worked my way up there. I'm very happy with how it came out, but initially it was actually very hard because I had sort of like pseudo designed decks, taken other people's decks, edited them and whatnot. This is my first design that I made from the ground up that I'm happy with. And the box was the last part of my design. So I got inspiration from the Dan and Dave mirror collab that they had with anyone for a very minimal, simplistic text in the side, back design there. But I wanted to, I'm getting a phone call. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine. Do you need to take it?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I can continue talking. So when I was designing this, I went through a lot of iterations. Some of them were a lot more chaotic, but my main approach was I wanted to create a box that contrasted the cards themselves. The cards, they have a lot of white to them, white borders. So I wanted to create a box that was the opposite of that would stand out. So I had it be all matte black. There's not a lot of black in the actual cards themselves, so I figured that would be pretty fun to do. And I also wanted to, going forth, I wanted to have some standards for all of my future decks if I choose to release some more, which I currently plan to, but we'll see. I wanted to have the logo be on the bottom. A lot of people have the logos, or not the logos, like their brand name on the side. I feel like that takes up a little too much space. I thought on the bottom would work well, as well as have the information on the side. I sort of stole that from Paperwave Venomous. I really liked how they did it. And then, of course, for some added details, I wanted the deck to feel premium. A lot of people, when they release a $15 deck, they have glossy tuck cases, but I despise glossy tuck cases. They feel cheap to me. So I spent the additional dollars and I got it matte black. I embossed it, letterpressed it, and it feels nice in the hands. It feels good. It's tactile. So also, that's sort of my process going into it. I'm very happy with how they came out.
It's cool to see like a new deck come out. This sounds foreign to me based off of like the previous years, but it feels like I almost wish more decks were coming out right now, which is the opposite to what I've said every other year, essentially. So it's nice to see something come out. How has your reaction been to people using the deck and starting to get them out in that process?
It's been great. There's one thing for me that I despise doing, which is not good for a brand. I don't like creating marketing content for it, which is not good when you're trying to sell products to people. But creating pictures and videos, to me, I don't know why. I used to really enjoy it in high school. I'd create all these pictures and videos. Maybe I'm burnt out, sick of it. But what I thought was really fun is other people have bought the deck and then created edits. They've created moves and videos and taken pictures of the deck and sent them to me. Go, hey, post this. So I mean, I find it funny that a lot of my marketing, at least if you scroll through the RedactedUSA page, as of recent, are cross posts from other people, and they just like the deck, they like the brand, and they want to help me out and get this deck out to other people. So it's been a lot better than I expected. You know, like when I buy a deck, I use it in my personal life. Maybe I post a story or two, and then I kind of leave it in a drawer. And that's it. I use it in my personal time. Maybe I use it when I'm out with other people, but rarely do other people's decks go online for me. And seeing other people enjoy it so much, text me about it. It's been a lot better than I expected. It's been great.
Yeah, I think like one of the problems with like I love the idea of pre-order decks,
Yeah.
but like there's such a big gap in between you order it and you receive it that once you receive it, you're not really as hype about it. So feel like people don't post as much about like pre-order decks. Like I noticed that with some of the Verts decks. It's like they'll be really excited for it, and then a long time goes by and they kind of forget about it and just shows up in the mail.
I feel the exact same way. That's why I took the risk. I could have gone safe and gone made a Kickstarter about it, and then I would have all the money to buy the deck at the end of the Kickstarter, so there's no risk to losing money. But I've been through that experience, and when I received the deck, it's just not as it's exactly what you said. There's just no hype there because you've been looking at pictures of this deck for months and months, and then it comes and it's like, okay, well, I was excited when I first bought it. I'm not so excited about it now. So I printed this deck so that people can have it right away. And, I'd be spending the money at the end of the day, whether it's a pre-order or not, I'm still spending the money. So I figured might as well just rip the Band-Aid and print it right away.
Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of confidence to like do that because it's not, I mean, compared to some stuff, it's cheap to produce, but like it's still a lot of money to put into something, especially if you're not 100% positive it's going to work out.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of risk there.
There certainly is risk, especially for someone with student loans. But I figured that the student loans, like a 30-year plan, I can make back my money in 30 years. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. So another thing I wanted to talk about is just meeting in person, like cardistry events, cardistry jams. Yeah. This is something that's very important to me. I run Midwest Cardistry, which kind of meets in Ohio and Indiana every once in a while. So what have been some of your experiences with live cardistry events? I know you went to the Square Up Cardistry Jam most recently, and I think Cardistry Con San Diego. So what has been your experience like meeting people in person and being able to come and commune with others?
I've had only positive experiences. The first time I ever met other cardists, it was just a local jam that was hosted by Mike Warnecki and Sawyer. And I met a bunch of other cardists there. Some guys I'm very happy to call my friends, and we've jammed over the years. That was in 2019. And that was a great time. And ever since like that first time, I've tried to get to every jam I can. You traveled a far away for Midwest Jam. I travel certainly not as far, but 2.5 hour drive just for a few hours of hanging out with other cardists is more than worth it. If you're ever feeling in like a slump where cardistry isn't inspiring, if you go to one of these jams and you meet with other cardists, it's just so enjoyable. And there's something about it that it's very inspiring. Seeing other people, hearing their critique face to face instead of through a camera screen, it feels more authentic. And when you can physically move your head around and see what they're doing, get different angles, you can learn a lot easier that way. And to me, it takes cardistry from something that's solely online and bringing it into real life. There's just something surreal about that. And Cardistry Con San Diego was incredible because I got to meet a lot of friends that I've only spoken to online in group chats for years, and meet them in person. It's just a great experience. I would say if anyone can be able to go to some sort of convention, if it's Midwest Cardistry, if it's Square Up, if it's, I know Boston has regular jams, I think Seattle as well.
Yep.
Even if you got to drive out a few hours, do it. And if you can go to Cardistry Con or Cardistry Experience or any one of these other jams, do it. It's worth it. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's been really cool to meet people that you've seen online in person, but also like get exposed to other people that can become friends as well.
Right.
Sometimes that can be overwhelming. Like in my case, when I went to the Cardistry Con, it's like, I'm an introvert by nature. And then it's like, here's a ton of people you kind of know. So
right.
Like, but it's good to get out of your shell and to like meet these people. Cause I think community aspect is very important for any hobby, to be inspired and to want to keep doing it.
Without a doubt.
And then I think like kind of said it best, where he's like, one of his favorite things is meeting online friends in person. Like that's one of his favorite experiences. And I think with these kind of groups like Boston Cardistry and Seattle Cardistry, you do see like some of the best cardists coming out of those areas because they have that aspect of collaboration. Like I know Lars and Nate and like Trevor and like all those people, like they meet somewhat Aslan, like they meet somewhat regularly.
Yeah.
And it's like they kind of get an advantage from that, I think.
Absolutely. I feel that when I have a move, it's a 2-packet move that I use for low stand singles, the one where the 2 packets kind of go around each other. And the only reason that came to exist was because I was at a jam, and Ben Schulte, he saw me just fiddling around with some packets, and he saw me for a brief moment do that packet transfer, and that would have totally disappeared. That would have gone in, that would have faded from existence had he not gone, what did you just do there? That looked cool. And then I sort of isolated that motion. It was initially in a 4-packet cut, and now we have the cut that people seem to like. So if I wasn't in person, that move would never have existed, because there wasn't, people watching you and talking to you like immediately face to face about what you're doing.
Yep. And then we have another question here from Tyler again. And it's, what does the cardistry world need more of? And I have some opinions on this too, so I'll throw in my opinions. But do you want to go first, or would you like me to?
Sure, I can go first. I mean, while we're talking about jams and being in person with people, cardistry world certainly needs more of it, especially for people who have never done it before. They need to get out and meet other cardists in person. I feel that in-person collaboration is very important. I think cardistry world needs more, I would say, people doing other people's moves. That's a lot of what people post are just their own moves. I'm guilty of this. I don't know if I have a single move. I have a combo on my page that uses someone else's move. But Connor O'Kane talked about this with me last night. And learning someone else's move and posting it, it sort of builds more of a community aspect. Instead of you are your individual that does these set of moves, he is himself that does his set of moves. When you're all sharing and doing each other's moves and developing them, it is more of a community aspect. My wording is terrible, but I'm hoping I'm getting these ideas across. It brings people together more. I think talking about cardistry is great. Things like this podcast, just getting people sharing their opinions on things is very important, as well as I think cardistry has slowed down recently. And I think doing things to invite more cardists to begin cardistry, as well as to make current cardists more inspired to do cardistry, whether that's innovation, new videos, whatever it may be. Very broad. I just said a lot of things the cardistry world needs more of. What do you think?
I think one of the main things is like an easier way for people to get into it, like laymen or people that are interested in it. I think there's a lot of space for like people that are just fans of cardistry that don't necessarily do it. Like I'm somewhat a fan of American football a little bit, but I do not play or do not care to even ever try to play. So people like that would be good, I feel like, for the community. And I do think there are people like that. Like I met some of those people at CardistryCon, which was interesting because I didn't really know that was too much of a thing. Because like you see a lot of the exact same people in the comments and stuff of videos. But I think one of the biggest things is like in-person or online teaching, like for new people. I think that would be an extremely helpful tool for newcomers. I think Missing is doing something like that, like once a month on their Discord. I think I read that. I'm not sure, 100% sure. But things like that, that is really cool, I think, in my opinion. I would love to see other people do that. It's like, I know there was Nate Lex with XDex for a while, and like OPC as well, where he's constantly churning out tutorials. So I think just easy moves for people to learn early on is good, because so much of the community is like past that initial stage, and I don't know how many people are in the stage up until that good point.
Right. I know that right now there are a lot of great tutorials online. I know Lotus in Hand has their Cardistry boot camp, and SquareUp is constantly putting out tutorials, not even specifically on moves, although they are doing that, but on broader topics: how to design your first move, how to film cardistry to post online, stuff like that. For people that have never done it, lowering that barrier to entry and making cardistry seem non-threatening is very helpful to someone who's just starting, because they see these crazy moves. Whenever I do a move for someone, the first thing they often say is, "Wow, I could never do that. That looks really hard," which, if you're a beginner cardist, is not what you want to feel going into it. It's good knowing when you start a hobby, saying, "I could be that someday. Right now, I'm here, and it's not going to be that difficult of a process." It's going to be a long process for sure. Cardistry takes a while to learn, but they shouldn't feel like every day it's going to be, painful.
Yeah, I agree too. Another thing I've been thinking about, or I've thought about a lot, is kind of like, how do we keep track of our history in a way? Like how cardistry has become what it is today. I feel like
sure.
a lot of people don't realize the history, or even myself, it's hard to like know like what all happened with Dan and Dave back in the day, and like how people came into prominence, I guess. So I wish there was like more tracking of the history, because I also would like I said, with like being casual fans of cardistry, is like for like the tournaments is like a lot of times with these tournaments, you don't know who the person is, or you don't know like the history. Like you don't know if they've been in a contest with this person before, and maybe there's like a rivalry, stuff like that, or like if this is a new up and comer or underdog. Like I wish there was better. I guess this could come down to like reaction videos or people kind of posting that type of stuff.
Sure.
But I wish there was kind of more of like a competitive nature and like the form of like athletes almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if someone. I know that some history of cardistry exists. Like again, Lotus in Hand has made a video about that. I believe SquareUp is doing something similar. I just mentioned them too. But yeah, about individual cardists, if you could learn more about them. I never thought about that, but that could certainly be helpful.
Tyler said to shout out Cardistry Archive. So that's that. And then, yeah, I don't know. It's just, there's so many things with cardistry because it's so new. I feel like there's so many missing avenues to consume cardistry. Like there's not really news channels anymore. Like stuff will come along and then it just goes away because it's a lot of effort, a lot of times for little reward. I definitely felt that way with the podcast before. But like more avenues to experience and be entertained by cardistry.
I can feel that. Right now, it's sort of funneled itself into Instagram, is where you consume all of your content. People are posting fewer and fewer videos to YouTube. I know Reddit, there is a cardistry subreddit. From what I heard, it's like cancerous. That's all I really know about that. But I think, more diversity in how you can consume cardistry, get information would be great too.
Sorry, I'm kind of blanking here.
No worries.
I'm like looking at my summary of all the questions I've had and to make sure I've hit everything. We did talk a little bit about the design of the box, but I don't think we talked much about the design of the deck for Mick Ultra. So what was kind of your process for that and what you were trying to create?
Yeah, so I started the design back in 2019, 2020. And I wanted a deck that kind of has my personality in it. I've said it a lot of times. So back in the day, I was very into like conspiracy theories. And that was when I sort of first jumped into the rabbit hole of, oh man, what are these, what is the US government up to? Everyone knows the US government is up to something shady, but it isn't until you really look into it that sort of piques your interest. So I created the first concept deck, and I think the first person I showed it to was Nate Lex, actually, and it was really bad. It was horrendous. As I'm also colorblind, so the first deck was like snot green and orange, because to me that looked like red and yellow, and he helped me realize those are not the right colors. I developed initially. So for everyone who doesn't know, this is the deck here, and each deck has a different back design to it. So when you shuffle the cards and manipulate them, it creates a sort of different motion and flow to the cards, which I really liked. I'm gonna backtrack. I was first inspired by Elliot Slevin's Clouded Paper. That was like the first deck that I bought that was created solely for Cardistry, and it like immediately became my favorite deck because it has a similar thing of 56 different back designs, and it's like ink stained paper almost. It's a really great deck. I'd recommend it if anyone can find it nowadays. But one gripe I had with it was that now for his deck it works perfectly, but I really wanted a deck that had a similar aspect to it where there are 56 different back designs. But in his deck, there's not a balance between the white and the blues. There's different amounts of blue and white per each deck, or sorry, for each back design, which again for his deck works perfectly, but I wanted something different. So I thought about how I could have a balance between the two colors, and I finally settled on a wavy line texture that each one will have a roughly equal distribution of the two colors. And I kind of sat at my computer and I designed each individual back design separately, independently, and that took a very long time. I think I ended up designing over 100 backs total. And then finally someone said to me, why don't you have the uncut sheet be one massive wavy design? And I felt so dumb when he said that. I thought, how didn't I think of this? So I instead created one large wavy design. I stretched it across the whole uncut sheet and I chopped it up into tinier back designs and I layered them onto this deck of cards here, which I think it's a lot more cohesive than the previous iterations of it, and it just makes more sense. And when you have the uncut sheet in front of you, if you kind of squint your eyes, the borders blur, it looks like one big wave. I'm really happy with how it came out. And then I did something similar. The initial versions each had a pip on each of them, sort of similar to the Anyone checkerboard line, where a bit of the back design of each card would show through that pip, which would kind of create a similar motion. And that was sort of a sign of the times. When I first designed the deck, it fit in that era. But now when it came time to actually print them today, that trend had passed. So I decided to scrap that. However, a bit of that does remain in the quartz. So each of the quartz has a wavy texture in it, and that wavy texture is the back design itself of each one. So a little bit of that initial design did stay. Has a monarch, butterfly, ace of spades. And then the ad cards, if you have the deck, you know it. It's my own kind of sense of humor to them. And yeah, I sort of wanted every aspect of it to be what I want to see in playing card design as like a whole.
Mm-hmm. I think, like you said, the uncut sheet is pretty cool, and it makes it a little bit more desirable, I think, or collectible when you have like an overarching theme where it's one image that's been chopped up. So Tyler said it wasn't until he saw the uncut sheet that he got a new appreciation for the deck. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm not usually one to collect uncut sheets, but like when you have something more unique about it or where it's thematic, I think more people are more likely to want to check it out.
Yeah. Now, can I talk about what Daniel just said?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. So he said it'd be cool if there was a flip book style deck, which is funny because that was the initial design. So I suppose not the initial design, but one of the concepts that I had for this was it was a flip book style where a ball would bounce around and it would hit the borders and bounce off, and it was very inspired by Dots because that deck had come out a couple of years prior and everyone was using it. It was a big thing. It kind of still is. But initially, you'd riffle through it, and the ball would bounce, and it would kind of spin. And but I found that when you're actually doing cuts with it, it looked kind of silly because once you do that, then the riffling is gone. The ball just kind of scatters, and there's not much continuity to it, which for me, it just wasn't what I liked. But I like Daniel's idea of having the waves sort of flow. That'd be really cool. I think I'll experiment with that in the future. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, that is really cool. The problem I have with the flipbook idea is just like it has to be out of the box and like in the exact order. So it's like it's a really cool thing, but like after you open it, it's kind of like it's just I'm not gonna go through the effort to reorder that thing.
No, so. I think Adam Wilber, I believe, designed a campfire deck where when you riffle it, no matter how it's shuffled, it looks like the fire's flickering. That's just because fire's chaotic. So it's going to flicker regardless. I mean, that's like the only example I've seen where you can still do that, but that's not that impressive of a flip book. But it would be cool to see more flip books where they could somehow work out of order. But yeah, I have a couple flip book decks, and they're cool. They're local novelty items. If you can make a flip book deck that works well for Cardistry, then that's like props to you. I know Axis works well because the design doesn't change too much between each back design, so there's still that cohesion. And but yeah, I definitely feel exactly what you're saying, where you're not gonna, oh, I got this really cool deck of cards. Here, give me 10 minutes to order and orient this deck. I don't know if anyone's gonna have the patience for that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could buy 2 decks and one's just for a flip book.
Right, yeah.
What are some of you've clearly taken some inspirations from like Clouded Paper and like you say dots and stuff. What have been some of your favorite decks that have come out, I guess, of all time?
Of all time? Well, I mean, dots is certainly one of them. Just the feel is great. The colors are really cool, that colorway. And the minimalism, I initially hated dots when they first came out because I thought it was dumb. It was lazy, but since I got a deck in my hand, feeling that tuck case, the deck feels great regardless of how much you break it in. It's been said to death a million times, but that certainly was one of my favorite decks. I've been getting a lot into Yan Gan Yaohe, however you pronounce that. I've really, again, and those were also designs I initially hated. I hated them because actually I can't think of a Cardistry brand that I didn't hate at one point, now that I think about it, for one reason or another. But I initially thought this for the same reasons. The clip art style is lazy and you're just copy pasting it and it looks ugly. But getting them in your hands and then using them has been a lot of fun, especially with their most recent ping pong deck. As well as the simplicity of other decks like the solid color fontaines. I don't care much for the patterns, but the solid color fontaines are nice, like similar to Winds. But I guess if you want specific decks, I really like Dots Winds for the feel and the minimalism. It's very good. Obviously, my own decks that I designed for myself, it's like no kidding. Of course, I like them. I designed them for my own personal needs and how I dress and stuff like that. Missing has also been doing some really nice decks. Holies, I see you have some in the background there.
Yeah.
While, I mean, Holies are the concept, the design, it's all great. It's hard to do normal moves with them, but that's not the point. The point is to use them for hole-based moves, which is just, it's fun and it opens up a new sort of level to it. Yeah. So I guess I should have come mentally prepared to list off my favorite decks, but those are the ones I can pull off the top of my head.
Yeah. I think the Holy deck is probably one of my favorite releases from last year, as well as the accordion.
For sure.
I just like new ways to experience Cardistry, and just new ways to play around and create things. We got another question here, and is what advice would you give yourself if you were to start the design process again?
Use Pantone colors right out of the gate. Don't mess around with RGB. I'm saying that because, again, I am partly colorblind, so I won't have to deal. I've designed so many decks where other people get it and they just go, ugh, because to me the color looks great. But Pantone is a set color line where each color is made by some like nerdy color scientist or whatever, and it works well. I would say take breaks in designing, let your eyes reset, and then come back to it and see how it looks. Because there are a lot of times where I spend 8 hours a day. I'm there. I'm going boom, 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 boom. I'm designing it. I'm laying it out. It all looks good, and then I wear myself out to exhaustion, and I think I've just created a masterpiece. This is the next best deck. Going to sell out 1 million copies. And I wake up the next morning and it looks horrendous. It looks so bad. Just because when you're in that mode, I don't know what's going on in your brain, but it looks completely different. I would say certainly that, as well as don't bank on trends too hard. I don't know if that's a good idea, but for me, I'm slow and I procrastinate a lot. So if I go all in on one trend, and then when it actually comes time to design or release the deck and the trend's over, then you're gonna have to make a lot of changes, which is what I ended up doing with MK Ultra. I would say focus on color and make something that you want to use yourself. Don't make a deck for someone else, because if you don't want to use the deck at the end of the day, then you're not going to be happy.
Mm-hmm. I definitely have noticed too, with what you said, like you can be editing something, going into like every detail and thinking it's great, and then you take a step back and you're like, oh, that's garbage. And I've also been on the flip side of that, where you think this is garbage, this is horrible, and then you come back to it and you're like, oh, this was actually not bad. Like you do need some space, some time, and like some time to process what you're creating.
Absolutely.
Another one from Daniel O is, are you going to be making more decks with the MK Ultra theme, or just make wholly new stuff if you continue to create?
So as I continue to create, I'm going to stick to the like government theme, secret society theme, maybe some occultism theme, American culture, stuff like that. I'm not going to create more mind control decks, but I may create other government project decks and things of that line, whatever interests me. And but I do plan on keeping the branding the same. Sort of, I like firearms, so I'll probably maybe make some not strictly gun-based designs, like in the redneck sense of it, but it's sort of hard to explain with words. I think it's best expressed through pictures and videos and other stuff like that. So the MK Ultra theme I'll have similar decks along the same line that fit together, but not mind control specifically.
Mm-hmm. And then I know we touched on it a little bit, but the gun production, now that we mentioned guns a little bit here, how did that kind of come about, and what was the reaction to it? Because I feel like the reaction was pretty good.
It's so it first came out when I wanted to create something that was funny. It's hard to create moves that are funny. And because I like to think of myself as a little bit of a jokester, so I wanted to put my own personality into my moves. And I like guns. I think they look cool. I think they go hard. They're aesthetically pleasing. So I tried to think of a way to merge the two. And my initial one was, what if I wanted to create a 4-ace production, but instead of producing 4 aces, I produce a gun instead. And that was kind of hard to do, because I initially created a move where it was like you see 1 ace in the bottom and then another ace in the middle, and you push off an ace from the top, and it's like, okay, I know where he's going. It's going to be a 4-ace production, and then I produce a gun. That move was very hard, knacky, hard to conceal the angles. But at the end, the punchline is kind of the same. It's like, oh, there's a gun, haha, right? And then I was jamming in Discord, and that same night that I had that idea, I kind of created gun production like within 10 seconds. It was like right away it was done. Once I could find out how to conceal that gun, then it was game over. And everyone laughed in the Discord. They all thought it was funny. Initially it was a joke, and some people liked it, thought it was cool. Everyone thought it was funny. So of course I'm like, I have to make this a thing. So I polished it. I worked on the angles, and I could even conceal it even with the holes in the deck, because I posted on my story a version of it with Holy, and I'm very happy with it. As for resent from others, I got a lot of strong reaction from some people when I showed some cardists in person. Some of them really liked it. Some of them went silent. My guess is it's because guns are very polarizing in this country. A lot of people, not everyone, many people have very strong opinions on guns, not even just in the country, but around the world. So I feel like maybe that has something to do with it. Also, it's not really a cardistry move. It's also a bit of magic too. And it's just interesting. It's unique. It's its own thing. It is currently on my Instagram page, my most viewed reel, but it is also one of my least liked reels. So it's interesting. A lot of people saw it. A lot of people shared it. A lot of people watched it more than any other video I have. But I think it's kind of polarizing. You either really like it or you don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just so different, not necessarily cardistry or magic, but I thought it was funny personally. It is a little uncomfortable when you like point it at the screen.
Right. Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, but yeah, I could see how it would be polarizing. I just thought I saw more people share that than most of your other stuff. So I feel like it made the rounds, at least for me, more than.
No, it certainly did.
So. Would you want to talk about Lotus in Hands at all?
I had to throw the comp. I'll summarize it quick. I entered the competition with a move that I wanted to post. I just wanted to get the move out there, but I wanted to also use the hashtag for attention, for clout. It was me being greedy and exploiting Lotus in Hand, kind of in a way. And he ended up actually really liking the move, which was not what I intended. And I had no moves saved up. Which is now what you're supposed to do. If we could get some clown emojis in the chat for me entering a comp with no saved moves and very little experience making moves. So my moves take a long time to make. And I was also going into my final year of university. I think I had 16 or 17 credits of engineering along with my sort of capstone project. So I was going to be very busy. I was very busy the moment classes started. And I was, of course, paired up against Dobby, who's an insanely good cardist. I had to throw. Unfortunately, my moves were not good. I could have used old moves. There were no rules saying I couldn't. But I knew that if I did progress further, I would not have time for it, and I would only end up making more of a clone of myself. So that's what I got to say.
I remember back in the day, like a long time ago, I entered into a cardistry competition when I was like a freshman in high school or like a sophomore.
Sure. Yeah.
And like when competitions weren't as big of a thing, and like I got through, and then I just didn't post around as well. So I've been there. Maybe not as that high of a level, but it is hard. And like you said, like you have to have your priorities in check, especially in college.
If you're entering, you should expect to get in. Don't be like me. Don't sell yourself short. I thought, oh, it's just a goofy little 2-packet cut. People like it a lot. So I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a good learning experience.
For sure. Well, yeah, what not to do.
So I've gone through pretty much all of my talking topics. Do you have anything that you would want to talk about? And this also goes out to the chat. If there's anything you guys would kind of want to hear us talk about before we kind of wrap things up.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I want to hear what other people have to say or wonder about me, because I sort of, when I think about myself, I see certain aspects about what I do, what I release, and other people see things that I totally forget about. So there's a decent chance that if people have questions, I will not answer them unless they're asked. I would say I really like a lot of moves that are coming out lately. People are still able to create new moves. You know, you'd think that cardistry at some point would die out because there's only so many things you can do, but people are still finding new motions, new grips, new mechanics. And that's surreal to me. You know, I guess I really got into cardistry, it'd be like 7 years ago. And seeing like Dobby's snowball move was insane. And Trin's Lotus in Hand solo has some insane stuff in there, and new concepts. Obviously, Quentin's concepts are crazy. I'm a big fan of new concepts, new ideas, and seeing that people are still creating new stuff. And Cardistry's been along for a very long time. Well, relatively speaking, it's older than me for sure. So that feels like a long time, right? In the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been long. We're only really in the beginning. So people are still able to create new stuff, and that's surreal to me. I don't know. Does anyone else have any questions?
Pablo said to, oh, wrong thing. Pablo said to talk about Didi.
Oh, okay, sure. So my first introduction to cardistry as a community, I was buying decks off of Reddit. I was on Playing Cards Market, I think, and I wanted to get more cardistry focused decks. And I had an Instagram page. I followed Pablo, was one of the first people I followed, and got into the sort of design aspect of cardistry as opposed to the actual moves themselves. And I learned about Fontaine, anyone, blah, blah, blah. And then I bought a deck from Adrian Lopez on Reddit. And he told me it was a deck of dots that was pristine condition. I washed my hands before I ever used them and whatever, yada, yada, yada. I buy the deck from him just expecting I would get a deck of cards and call it a day. And the deck is pooped. It has brown edges. The box is all dinged up. It has Sharpie marks on it. I'm like, dude, you scammed me. I want my money back. He's like, we can work something out, but join this group chat, which is called the Double D Fan Club. Of course, Double D is for Dan and Dave, obviously. Don't take that the wrong way. The Dan and Dave Fan Club. And I met, for the first time, I got sort of my entry into the world of the community, right? I was viewing it as an outsider, looking at other people's posts solely, but I wasn't engaging. I wasn't leaving comments. And this group chat was my first introduction to talking and meeting with other cardists online and getting feedback. And that was really what sort of kickstarted my cardistry career, if you want to call it that. And I'm still in the group chat every day. They're great friends of mine. Pablo, obviously, he's been there from the start. And very grateful to have them as my friends. I met them in San Diego for the first time, and it's just so cool meeting those guys, hanging out with them. They're great guys. A lot of their names are on the ad card of MK Ultra. One of the cards, it just has thank yous because they saw me make this deck from the start to where it is now. I've been talking with them since the beginning, running ideas by them, getting support. So it's very much a deck from them as well because they had a large impact throwing out designs. I would always ask questions about things off them, and they've been very helpful to me.
And then another question we have is how many deck drops a year is optimal for a brand?
I think ideally a brand should release at least one mystery deck drop with about 16 different decks every month would be ideal. So I think every month there should be at least 16 decks dropping. And no, I don't know. I think that depends on your scope, your scale, and what's realistic. I certainly think there's a large saturation of playing cards out there. I don't plan on releasing that many. I have a few. I will release them sporadically. I don't want to flood the market. We all know of a brand that has flooded the market and didn't work out too well for him. And clearly when you produce too many decks, it's not good for you as a brand. I don't know how it impacts the community per se. I think for me, I just kind of get annoyed by it, but that's more because my feed is flooded with basically playing card advertisements instead of cardistry moves. I like to see new moves more than I like to see new deck releases. But I think it's really bad for collectors. At one time, I was a collector. I wanted to get the full Anyone collection. And then I stopped at Cap logos. They dropped 3 decks at once, and it appeared as if they were only going to be producing more and more and more and more decks. So I said, I'm out. I can't keep up with this anymore. And I think if you're a Fontaine collector at this moment, obviously he's examined his own way of releasing decks, and it sounds like he's not going to go as crazy as he did. For those Fontaine collectors that stayed strong during all that, I salute you. But for me as an individual, I suppose I only buy decks I see myself using, so it doesn't impact me as much. But I certainly think that the last few years have been a bit crazy. I would say, to answer your question, 4 or 5, maybe maximum. But maybe I'm selling myself short. I don't know. I think with the amount of brands out there right now, there are a lot of decks out there too. But
Yeah.
does that matter? Does that matter so much? I think in general, we should have more moves coming out, considerably more moves in comparison to decks dropping. I like to see more of a growth of actual cardistry rather than playing cards, seeing as I'm a cardist more than I am a collector.
Mm-hmm. Pablo says he thinks 1 to 2 a year, and then Tyler said he agreed. I think I could agree with that if you wanted to collect, like, support most of the brands, but I think if you're more open to just supporting the specific ones you really connect with, 3 to 4 would be okay.
It is difficult because cardists should have some way to generate profit from cardistry. Otherwise, I'm not saying that that's like everyone should, but to grow the cardistry as an art form, it helps to have profits motivate. That's just the world we live in, right? Mm-hmm. And some people are able to make a living off of selling playing cards, and that's great. Good for them. Some people should have the option of doing that. Whereas releasing 1 or 2 decks a year, you're not going to be able to make a living off that. That's a hobby. That's, for most people, it's going to be a hobby, but I think maybe some people should be able to make a living off of cardistry if they're giving back as much as they're taking, right? If all that they're doing is releasing decks and taking people's money, that's one thing. I think I would like to see them give back to the community with tutorials, with videos, with jams and meetups, some sort of engagement to get people together talking and strengthen the community besides just decks. If you're only doing decks, it's the only thing you're doing, I could totally see the 1 to 2 a year. That's just my personal thing. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we have PacMe 1990. Is there a concern on the current state of cardistry in terms of possibly low interest, burnout, and less card drops after oversaturation?
Absolutely, there is. You said what I perceive the current state of cardistry to be. A lot of popular cardists aren't posting anymore. Like, when was the last time Chase Duncan dropped a move, right? Dropped Heritage maybe back, I don't even remember when, but he's like one of like the originals. Getting burnt out. A lot of people are burnt out now. I know Beckett makes great moves, and he had to take months off. It's real. Obviously, oversaturation. A lot of brands have slowed down their playing card release. I'd say that's good. So to answer your question, I believe so.
Mm-hmm. I think this was bound to happen as well, just from COVID. It was bound to kind of increase in popularity when everybody's at home, and this is something you can do at home. I think all of the other things that I am into, like Legos and video games, like those also took a boost because it's something you could do at home. Mm-hmm. So I think some of this fall off was inevitable when things kind of opened up more. But I do think there is a little bit of concern with how much it's slowed down. And that's kind of why I'm doing this podcast right now with you as well, is because I've noticed that. And I'm like, I would like to help in some way if I can.
For sure.
Tyler says, I think that coming back to what Cam said earlier, seeing cardists do other people's moves would be cool and doesn't always have to be 100% original.
Yeah, that's just it. It makes me very happy when I see other people who have learned my moves, and it makes me more inspired. That's just a personal aspect of it. As an individual cardist, I enjoy seeing other people do my moves. And as a community, I think it's good as well. As I mentioned before, gets people talking and inspires people more, and makes us feel more like a community instead of separate individuals.
Yeah, and it's also something to keep you active and learning in the community. I know there's some points where you really you don't have the creative capabilities to make something sometimes, whether it might be, so it might be a good time to work on somebody else's move and get inspiration from other people instead
Absolutely.
of just trying to get it from yourself.
Right. Like my personal cardistry experience nowadays is about half the time it's me learning or practicing someone else's move. The other half of the time it's me making my own. And I can't really I can't make my own moves unless I'm learning someone else's move to steal. I don't know if it's stealing from or get inspired by other people's work, whether it just be grips or motions or whatever.
Mm-hmm. This is something I'm admittedly very bad at, is sitting down and trying to learn other people's moves, just because I'm like, and this comes out to the burnout thing, is like you have to try, you want to make something cool that everybody's going to enjoy, or like that's going to be competitive. And some people aren't at that level. Like I don't think that I have the time to invest to be a competitive cardist, unfortunately, at least currently.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot to be said about how serious we take cardistry, which is why I enjoy some of the funness that you're trying to integrate into Redacted USA. Is that kind of, I guess you said you just find yourself as a funny person, but has that also been kind of a force in doing?
Yeah, I personally enjoy cardistry because it's fun. I don't see cardistry as some sort of art piece that deserves to be in a museum. Some people may disagree with me. In my experience, I find it's a fun way to exercise my creativity and make stuff that looks cool. Some people, they call it performance art, and I'm not going to call anyone out, but I follow this guy who goes up in some museum and he does cardistry silent music, and it's all emotional. And to me, it's a little bit ridiculous. I like it as something fun to do online. I see it something similar to juggling. It's obviously everyone draws a comparison, but I don't know if you're ever going to see a juggler in a museum taking himself seriously. I mean, juggling is frequently done by clowns, right? I think cardistry is something that should be fun and enjoyable for people, get people talking, mesmerize people. But when people take it so hyper seriously, it puts weight on people when they're learning moves. And some people, if you post a move, they go, "Oh, you didn't do X right, you didn't do Y right. When you do skirt, you're supposed to flip your wrist up a little bit, otherwise you're not doing the move right." And that takes all the fun out of it. It makes it not enjoyable. And that's just what cardistry is to me, and that's what I want to see out there. Is my mind open to changing? Sure, but that's just how it is at the moment.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said that everybody experiences cardistry in a different way. Whereas, this is just your viewpoint on it and how you enjoy it. Other people might really get enjoyment out of it being artistic and just a beautiful thing, which I do think there's some merit to that, and I think cardistry is a beautiful thing. But yeah, it feels like we've focused so much on the serious aspect of it, of being perfect or creating these mind-blowing moves, that we have ignored some other aspects of cardistry, like enjoying it, like actually enjoying it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we've been talking for a little bit over an hour now. I think this might be a good place to wrap it up, unless anybody has some final questions they want to get out. So if you do, hit them in the chat right now. But right now, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show and talking about Redacted USA and your thoughts on cardistry. It's been a real treat having you on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. I'm glad that you give me the opportunity. And of course, thank you for hosting this show. I think it's great getting people talking about it, spreading ideas, and especially in such an easily digestible form as a podcast, where you can just sit down and listen to it while you're doing something else. It's a great medium, and you're a great interviewer, and it's a great show. I'm glad you got me on. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Thank you for being on. If you guys want to hear more from Cam, he did do a interview with Paperless Podcast very recently, so you can check that out. There's another hour probably of content of him discussing cardistry in a little bit more laid back type of environment. So go check that out if you guys have the time. And thank you everybody in the chat for being here. Come to the next one. I'm going to try to do one every month. So one on the first week of the month is the plan from now on. And yeah, I'll see you guys next month, I guess. So thanks everybody, and we'll head out now.